Well, greetings everyone and welcome to this Cloud Admin Con 2015 focus session sponsored by GSX. I'm Roger, the event moderator, and as usual I have a few quick housekeeping items before I introduce our speakers. All participant lines are muted. And we encourage you to use the questions panel to submit any questions or comments you have during today's presentations. We'll try to get as many of those as possible after the conclusion of the presentations. We will be using the Twitter hashtag CloudAdminCon, that's hashtag CloudAdminCon, to share the links to the following focus sessions, and those links are also available in your email confirmation. And the next session will begin approximately 5 minutes after this one concludes. Our presenters for this session are Tim Book, Technical Sales Manager for GSX, and Olivier Raynaut, Microsoft Specialist and Pre-Sales Manager for GSX. Tim has been with GSX Solutions for 6 years and held various roles within GSX. He is a former messaging administrator and has experience with multiple technologies and platforms, as well as pre-sales operations and customer support. Prior to his technical sales manager role, Tim led the GSX US support team and was also involved with product management. As a member of the GSX technical sales team and the product management team, Olivier Raynaut has in-depth PowerShell experience and a strong knowledge of Microsoft platforms, including Office 365, Exchange, SharePoint, and Skype for Business. And now I'll turn it over to Olivier to get us started.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roger. Hi, everybody, and glad that you're all here attending to this session. So before starting going into the actual content, just a brief agenda of what we'll be covering today. So we'll go over a quick context with Tim that will outline the different fears and misconceptions that we often hear about the cloud in general and Office 365, and of course how the realities actually is. Then I'll explain a little bit the different phases that you might be in for Office 365, and we'll actually show you how you can access a lot of that information so that you have visibility and tools that you can actually use to empower more you with visibility and control over the cloud. And we'll do a quick walkthrough so tool by tool so that you can understand how you can use them, how that works, and what you need to be set with that. So there'll be some great things we'll show, including PowerShell and how you can use APIs using simple tools like Excel. So really excited to show you all of that. And finally, we'll wrap up with how you can automate these different health checks and reporting so that you can have these reports, provide them to upper management, and see how you can use them. So really excited, and I'll hand over to Tim for the context.
Thanks, Olivier. Again, welcome to everybody for our session. Really glad that you can make it here. So like Olivier had mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about some common fears and misconceptions with migrations to Office 365 and the cloud in general, let's say. One of the biggest things that we would hear from administrators, both through our client base and through talking to people in the industry, is that there may be no visibility into the cloud infrastructure. It's basically a black box with no insight into the internal architecture. Us as admins, we're very used to things like having CPU statistics, RAM statistics, disk statistics, and things like that. But in the cloud, it's just kind of a little bit of a voodoo thing going on here. You don't really know what's going on. You don't have that visibility into it, okay? Another common misconception is that we're no longer responsible for the environment. Things are in the cloud, so this is not sitting in my architecture, sitting on my network. It's not my responsibility anymore. Less security, so being that those resources and architecture are not in our personal network, it's less secure. We don't have insight into it. We're not managing it. Other third parties are responsible for that security. So that's a common issue, a common concern that's brought up amongst admins in the cloud. Limited compatibility with existing applications. Another common misconception is that things aren't going to work when you move into the cloud. Either custom applications you might have locally, some third-party apps that you're running, you know, not having that compatibility with the cloud infrastructure is a common concern amongst them. And then finally, poor performance. So it's not on my very fast, robust network anymore, so there's going to be performance issues for my clients, for my customers. And then potentially there's millions of other customers that are accessing this Office 365 cloud infrastructure. So, you know, there's concerns that there are issues being able to access the things in a timely manner and latency and things like that. So that's another common misconception that we've come across. So what is the reality of actually moving to the cloud? The reality is that there are actually a lot of tools available from Microsoft, and many third-party options are possible to be able to give us more insight in the cloud. It's not just going to be a black box. We do have some visibility into there. It's not necessarily going to be a one-to-one analogy as we're going to go across, but there's definitely a lot more information than what a lot of people under the understanding of. Performance can be great, but relies upon multiple metrics. So the concerns about having a lot of people accessing that infrastructure at the same time and not being on your own network, you'll find for the most part that you're not going to have, except in like really remote sites or sites that you know have poor network performance anyway, you really shouldn't have that issue. You still do need to be proactive though. So just because it's sitting in the cloud infrastructure, there's a large brand name company sitting behind it, Microsoft or other cloud companies, they definitely want to make sure everything is taken care of and your data are safe and your performance as well, but you still need to be proactive about that. You still need to get the information, to be constantly monitoring and reporting on the information to make sure your users are getting that same experience that they were getting with your on-premise infrastructure. You are still responsible for that service that's being delivered, both from a performance standpoint and an availability standpoint. Hybrid can be a great way to maintain some key mailboxes on-premise as well as providing service for remote locations with poor performance. So if you do have some key mailboxes or infrastructure or applications maybe that would benefit from being on-prem, you still do have that option to be able to run in a hybrid scenario where those applications can stay on-prem for whatever restrictions they have and the majority of your users can go over to the cloud. We actually have internally at GSX here, we do have that situation where we have some mailboxes that need to stay on-prem due to some of our legacy applications that we're running, but the majority of our users are in Office 365 right now from a production standpoint. And then one of the major points of what we're going to be talking about here is that there are options available to you as an administrator. So both from Microsoft's perspective, some custom things that you can do. And another thing there is that end users are not going to be calling Microsoft when they have a problem, right? They're not going to be calling the other cloud providers. They're going to be calling you if there's an issue as the administrator. So regardless of being on-prem, being in the cloud, us as admins, we still need to be vigilant about this. We still need to make sure that we're taking care of things just as if it was on our own network here. Okay, so now I'll turn it over to Olivier, who's going to talk a little bit about the different phases of an Office 365 migration.
Thanks, Tim. So yes, so I assume there are some of you in each phase that we're showing right here. So some of you might probably be planning a migration or even just doing a POC with Office 365. Some of you are probably through that migration. Hopefully everything goes fine for you. And then, I mean, in the end, it's going to be some kind of run and maintain, deploying these services and looking over. So let's look at each phase and understand what are the things that you'll be looking at and what metrics you should be interested in. So first, planning the migration. So there's going to be a lot of prerequisites that you will want to be looking at. There are some great resources out there that we'll share with you at the end of this session. So I encourage you to check the network planning and performance tuning for Office 365. For example, that's a great way to look at it. So just to sum up basically the prerequisites, you're going to be looking at ensuring that the performance will be good from the different sites. So this will include checking the number of hops to Office 365 service, looking at the latency both from TCP, HTTP, looking at the resolution times from the different host names in your DNS. There's going to be a series of ports that will be needed to be opened depending on the services that you use, so Exchange Online, Skype for Business, SharePoint Online, OneDrive, and a lot of all these prerequisites will also be down to the bandwidth that you'll be able to have so that you can access these services and that you'll be providing good performance to the end users. Another thing you should be considering is your on-premises hardware. So yes, this will be important to look at because you might be doing directory synchronization, ADFS to authenticate. You might need to add some edge servers. So these are things that you should consider prior to migration as well. So a lot of things that you need to consider and what will impact these prerequisites, and you have a checklist at the bottom that I encourage you to look at as well, is the number of sites, the different clients and protocols that will be used, so what Office client you have out there, the different protocols, so ActiveSync, EWS, if it's going to be cached Outlook or online connection, these type of things. And you'll need to collect a lot of information that is like distribution groups that you have and are actively being used, the resources and equipment mailboxes that you will want to migrate over to the cloud, all the external contacts, archiving. And a big thing will also be you will have to decide whether you will be hybrid or full cloud. And if you're going for the latter, you will need to know if you're going to go through a coexistence period or just doing a cutover. So a lot of things to consider, and again, a lot of metrics there that you want to know and check from the different sites that will be migrated to the cloud. So migration, three main things that I wanted to mention today with you is configuration. So you'll have to first check your AD, DNS, Exchange servers and mailboxes. Maybe you'll need to set up directory synchronization, almost likely, and check all your users' computers and all the clients that are out there. Then during the migration, you want to check about user adoption to keep track of the usage to ensure that users are adopting the different services, see how they're using it, kind of recognize some usage patterns and things like that. So a good way to follow the migration. And you'll want to look at all the licenses that are assigned and used and kind of understand how you want to assign these different licenses and services to your end users. And last thing will be performance. So during the migration, you'll probably hear some users complaining about performance. You need to have specific metrics that allow you to check and understand why they're having these feelings. And also you'll be wanting to troubleshoot from different levels, network level, application level, to understand better about what they're experiencing. And last phase is run and maintain. So probably a lot of you are now in Office 365 using it on a daily basis, and you're kind of in that run and maintain mode, which is quite different from what you used to experience on premises. So there are still some things that you want to have. You still want to know the status of the service because, as Tim explained, the end users, they're not going to call Microsoft. They're still going to rely on you to know what's going on, what are the services that are being impacted, what's performing well. So you still want to be alerted, check out the health of the environment. You'll be wanting to manage different licenses because depending on your end user growth, you'll be wanting to be proactive and make sure that you have the right licenses beforehand. And same for the performance. Ensure performance, services delivered, go through troubleshooting, so same steps as we've seen during the migration. And so in the end, you want to make sure that your end users are having a good experience with the services that you are providing to them with the Microsoft Cloud Office 365. So now let's check how can you access all that information. Well, there are actually a lot of things that are available from Microsoft, so a lot of different tools. We will outline 4 different categories here today with Tim. So I will first go through the Office 365 portal, so I guess most of you are already familiar with it. Not always easy to find what you're looking for in it, but definitely useful and a lot of good things to look at in it, to access your configuration, report on the usage, check all the incidents, and review your licenses. Then we'll outline some connectivity tools that Microsoft provide to you, and Tim will go over 2 of them. And then we'll go over PowerShell. So most of you should now be used to do some PowerShell every once in a while. Maybe not because you like it, but often because you have to. And finally, we'll go through the Office 365 APIs. Some of you might know them. Great tool. Not easy to understand how you can use it if you're not a developer. Well, today we'll show you how you can use something as easy as Excel to use and consume these APIs and provide great reports that you can show to like upper management. So let's go through the Office 365 portal. So all of you know that portal, I hope. It's a big interface, a lot of information. Easiest way to access it is portal.office.com. And you have several things that I will outline today, which will be the service health dashboard, the licenses, some reports that you have out of the box, and different tools that are available. So let's go through a quick demo. I will make it short because I believe most of you are familiar with it. So this is the portal. I'm currently logged in as a global administrator, and first thing you see is that dashboard. So there's always something I can show you here, so that's pretty good. So first thing you see is kind of a recap of the different services, and you can understand what's going on if there's some degradation over any kind of service. If you want more insights over the different incidents, there's actually a service health category right here. Let's click Service Health. And this breaks down into the different products and different services with it. So right now you can see today there's an issue with email and calendar access, and you can check the past week and things like that. For future incidents or impact that might happen, you can check the planned maintenance, which will give you some idea about what will happen. So other great thing to look at will be the different licenses. So under billing and licenses, you can check all the different licenses that you own, which one are expired, which one are assigned, and you can have some status about what you should be doing. So maybe you need to assign some of the licenses that you own. Maybe you need to kind of plan that you will require more licenses and things like that. So great way to check what's available here. Another thing, so that will really give you a lot of metrics, especially during the migration and on run and maintain, is the reports tab. So in here you have a lot of reports that are just a click away from getting data. So whenever you click on these reports, the data will be fetched as you click. So it can take some time, a little while, especially depending on the size of your organization. So here I'm looking at active and inactive mailboxes. You can sometimes drill in and have more information at the user level, which can be quite useful. So here we see different information about my users. Most of these reports are just accessible here, except for the protection report. So if we look at here for like top malware for mail, these are reports that you can actually schedule so that you would receive the graph on a weekly or monthly basis. So again, they might take a little time to load and be ready. So here we go. You see that report on the different agents and malware, and if you want, you can schedule that report really easily in a click. But that's only for these reports, so don't expect that to be available for the other one. And last thing I'd like to show you in that portal is the tools section. So you have different tools available, some that Tim will outline in the next overview of tool. But the first one I wanted to go over is that Office 365 Health Readiness and Connectivity Check. When you click on it, it will actually launch the interface. This is a web-based tool, but because it needs to do the checks from where you are clicking and using your browser, you will download an external file, and once you run that file, you're able to start the checks. So these tests can take a little while, so I'm not going to go through them, but lucky you, I have the results already there in my presentation. So we'll just go back to it. And so that will be the results. So basically it's going to do multiple checks from a network perspective, application and client's perspective, and checking all the domains and making sure all the important URLs are set in your DNSs. So here you can see I have some issues on the network and on my different domains, and you can actually click and take a deeper dive into each of these issues. So here, for example, I can see I have not set up a lot of the host names required to use Skype for Business correctly, especially for external use. So just to wrap up a little bit on the Office 365 portal, a lot of great things you can do in there to check configurations. I love the reports on protection, so spam, malware. You can even have like send and receive emails, because these ones you can actually schedule them. Great to review past incidents. And it's really, easy to use. Once you find the location of these different items within the portal, it's just a matter of clicking a few times to access to that information. The downsides, I would say, I really hear very often from Office 365 users that incidents are not really reported real time. It usually takes Microsoft 30 to 60 minutes after they detect an incident. Other thing is that you will always need to log in and navigate through that portal to get that information. It's kind of limited in terms of the control you can have over the permission assigned to whoever you want to provide access to that portal. And you can't really schedule any of the reports except the one on protection. So a lot of interesting data, but not all the reporting data is available. And that's why we'll show you other tools that you can use to help you with that. So I will hand it over to Tim to go over some of the tools that can help you for checking connectivity.
Thanks, Olivier. So like Olivier had mentioned, we're going to be talking here about Microsoft connectivity tools. These are free tools that are available from Microsoft to help you give you some performance and connectivity metrics about the Office 365 environment. There's lots of other free tools out there. There's a couple other from Microsoft. The two we're going to be focusing on today are what's called the Microsoft Remote Connectivity Analyzer, or RCA, you'll hear me refer to it, and the Microsoft Office 365 Client Performance Analyzer, or the OCPA. The RCA is an online tool to check for what I would say prerequisites to connecting to the Office 365 infrastructure. It's a cloud-based tool, so you load it up inside of your browser, and it gives you connectivity and configuration checks for Office 365. It's basically saying, using these test metrics that I have and these credentials, could I connect to the 365 environment from the cloud, so it's not going to analyze anything from your network perspective. Then we've got the OCPA, Office 365 Client Performance Analyzer. It's a local tool that you would download to test things from the client perspective. So similar to the tool that Olivier had shown earlier, you download a little MSI, launch that, and it'll give you performance and connectivity information and metrics from that client that you're downloading it from. So not just being able to connect to it, but a little bit about performance and network hops and things like that that we'll show once we launch the tools here. Okay, so the first one that I'm going to show is the RCA. Like I had mentioned, it's a browser-based tool here, testconnectivity.microsoft.com. There's links available from TechNet. We'll have some links inside the presentation that we made available. There's links to it in the portal that was shown earlier as well. You might already be familiar with it. We've got different tools and tests for Exchange Server and Link and some client-based testing, message analyzer tests here. But we're going to look at the Office 365 portion. And as you can see, we have different types of tests that we can do for our tenant, some general connectivity, EAS, web services, Outlook connectivity tests with AutoDiscover, which is really cool, some internet mail tests, sending email messages and generating traffic, and a free busy test. But what I'll show right here is the Exchange ActiveSync test. So if I click on that here, it'll give me a little tooltip, tells you what it's all about. We're going to be simulating a mobile device using the Exchange ActiveSync protocol. So let's click on Next here. It's going to give me a prompt for my information. So I'm going to put in my credentials here. We have a test tenant that we're using. So you might see some funny information in the test results, but plug in our connectivity credentials. I'm going to tell that I understand the credentials must be working and I'm responsible for the security of the information. Then we have to do a little CAPTCHA here. You won't have to do this for every test. It'll actually cache your CAPTCHA response for 30 minutes, I believe. So I can now run these tests for 30 minutes without having to rerun them or re-enter. Click on Perform Test here. This should take maybe 5 to 15 seconds the last time I ran it. But it's going out there from this cloud-based perspective, remember, using the information that you specified, simulating a mobile device. So connecting through ActiveSync, going through the auto negotiation, opening up a mailbox, and then it'll show all the results inside of here. So very, very handy tool, especially because it's cloud-based here, to simulate an ActiveSync device. Your Android devices or your Windows Phone or iOS are out there in the wild connecting to 365, trying to synchronize their messages. This is a nice tool to be able to simulate that activity. So you can see that the connectivity test was successful, but I had some warnings. If I click on Expand All here, it'll give me all the different steps and all the different testing phases that I went through. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a test tenant that we have here, so there's going to be some things that are not fully set up, but eventually, if we go down, you'll see that I made a connection through everything and I was able to synchronize through ActiveSync. Okay, so really, really handy tool here. There's lots of other tests that we can go through. I won't launch them all right now, but I would advise everybody to take a look at the tool, see what kinds of information are out there, and start testing in your environment, start looking at the information that's being generated. Okay, the other portion is the OCPA. So like I mentioned, that is a little tool that you would download. So it's actually going to run inside of a local window here. I've already downloaded it from the Microsoft site. There's, again, links to it inside of the portal. You can actually do an Exchange Online or a SharePoint Online. We're going to run the Exchange Analyzer. We fill in some credentials for us to be able to connect to the infrastructure. I can tell it to actually run in the background too on this client. I don't think it's customizable. I think it runs every few hours. It might be random times that it goes, but it would run in the background for you, generating these results. Now, I'm not going to run this right now because this one takes a little bit of time. It took me probably about 5 minutes, almost 10 minutes to run it, depending upon the time of day and the load and things like that. So I've actually got some results that have been loaded already. So I'll click on my results tab here. Here's the different runs that I was doing last week. But I have the information about my client that I ran it from, operating system, CPU, port availability. So obviously you're going to be able to hit the Office 365 infrastructure using these ports. Here is a service endpoint out of region. What that is basically telling me is that my tenant is geographically far from my current location. So it's just kind of like a best practice thing that says you should probably be closer, something to a closer data center. I don't know exactly where our test tenant is, but I'm in the US and I think this test tenant is in Europe somewhere, so it's recommending me to go to a different one if possible. That could be a config thing, that could be a licensing thing. You'd have to obviously sort that out with Microsoft. Gives me some DNS information here. I'm connected to our VPN, so my DNS resolution time is a little bit higher than what it would normally be. And then I've got some network information, just some basic ICMP requests, traceroute and hops and things like that. So nice little client performance analysis tool here. I can export these results to Excel if I wanted to. I can show the traceroute details to give me a little bit more detailed information about that. But again, it's a little tool that you download, gives you that information from that client perspective, which is really nice. So gives you a little bit of insight to what the clients are experiencing. You could deploy that from the local machine, a remote machine at a different site if you wanted to. So, okay. So let's talk about the pros and cons of those tools. Some of the pros can be very, very simple to run. Like you guys saw, I just basically launched everything, put in my credentials, and I was off and running. It gives you some general and network-specific information. So can I connect to the infrastructure? Are the ports open? What does the performance look like? Some DNS testing that you saw in the OCPA. So it gives you some nice information more than just saying, you know, getting a bulletin from Microsoft that says everything should be running, or getting one that says, no, we're having a problem with this. But sometimes, I don't know if you saw some of the messages earlier from the portal, but they can be a little bit cryptic or not having as much information as you would like. This can give you some insight into that. Some of the connectivity tools cons, though, they have to constantly be rerun. In the OCPA, you can schedule it, but you can't pick the times. So you basically have to have this run every time you want this information. You don't have, you know, that report that's waiting for you every business morning or at the end of the month or something like that. It's not as simple to report and trend on the information. You can run the tools and get the information, but having the information in a report format and seeing the trending and the history of the information is not the easiest to get. You've got to write the routines and to do the exporting and do the file manipulation that you want to get into a nice format that you want to do reports on. And then also you've got to wait for Microsoft to produce new versions of those tools. In the case of bugs or if they want new features implemented, you're waiting on Microsoft to improve those tools or to expose the information through Office 365 to give more information for this tool. So a little bit of pros and cons here. Definitely good tools to have inside of your toolkit though. So. And then, so the next portion we're going to be talking about is PowerShell here. Pretty much everybody at this point should be a little bit familiar with PowerShell. It's the way that Microsoft is pushing everything as far as like management of Windows servers and Windows environments is concerned. There's lots of GUI stuff still available inside of 2012 and in the new server operating systems, but a lot of it is being pushed towards PowerShell. You're going to see a lot of tips and tricks, a lot of ways of getting things done are going to be, let's say, published inside of from a PowerShell perspective, as opposed to the wizards or where to find this inside of the UI of Windows. So we definitely need to get familiar with PowerShell. There's lots of great resources out there on TechNet and other different tutorials and things like that. But one of the common misconceptions is that all of these PowerShell tools that you might be used to for your on-premise are not available for Office 365. Well, it turns out that most of them are available. There's lots of also additional command lists that have been predetermined from Microsoft that'll give you a little bit more extra functionality, kind of like prepackaged without you having to write them your own. I think Olivier is going to cover those a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, you can obviously write your own PowerShell. There's custom scripts that are out there. There's companies that provide those services. There's things you can download. So, and on the slide here, we've got a couple links to TechNet articles that'll give you a little bit of the PowerShell background here, how to connect to PowerShell. or how to connect using PowerShell to Office 365, and then also some of the command lists that are available. So that's that second link right here that's going to show me some of the mailbox command lists that are available for Exchange Online. So you'll probably recognize these if you're familiar with the Office or with the local Exchange deployments here. There's some ones that are customized to Office 365 as well that are available. Okay, so let's go through a little PowerShell script that I have written here. It's kind of an example of how to connect to Office 365 using PowerShell. So I've loaded up my ISE here. I've obviously written a script here that I've saved just so I can run very quickly. You could launch a PowerShell window and run the commands manually. You could have a script that's scheduled to be run automatically. You can use the PowerShell code inside of other applications or languages, which Olivier is going to touch upon briefly. But the basic premise here is that I can connect just like I would through my on-prem environment to Office 365. So I've just gotten some credentials here, open up a session to Office 365. In that first link, we'll have the details of this connection string that I'm using, but it's going to be similar just like to your on-prem. I'm going to import the session, and I'm going to run a get mailbox command, just like you've done probably dozens of times before on your local Exchange environment. Just a little pausing logic here so I can see the flow, do a get mailbox statistics, kill my session, remove the session. So I'm going to run the script here. It's going to ask me for my credentials. I'm going to plug in my test credentials one more time. And you'll see it connect, import all the modules so I can run those commands locally. There's my get mailbox details here, and then I've got a little sleep there, and then I've got my get mailbox statistics on my mailbox. I don't actually use my my test cloud mailbox, so you're not going to have much information. And then exit out of the script. Okay, very, very simple connection example here, but it's just going to show you that you can get this information in Office 365 using PowerShell. Now, with this information, I obviously have to write the code. I have to write the routines to get the information. I have to write the routines to massage the information, to format in the information in the way that I want to get it. Okay? So if we look at the pros and cons here of PowerShell, you do have the same functionality as on-prem, as I've mentioned a couple times. Everything should be pretty much available like it is for your on-prem. You control the information and commands, so you're the one writing the calls to Office 365. You're writing the reporting routines. You're writing the information gathering routines, so you're in complete control of that. However, that also can be a con. You're the one that's in control of it, so you're responsible for it. That can be a lot of work to create and maintain this information. Every time you want this information, you've got to go out there and run it or schedule it. When you want new information, when something breaks, you're the one that has to maintain it. You're the one that is going to have to work on that. So that can be a con. That can be a lot of work to do it, especially if it's new to you for PowerShell and you don't have a lot of scripting background or programming background. It can be a little bit cumbersome. Like I said, there's lots of great examples and tutorials, but if you're not used to it, it might take a little bit of getting used to. So, so those are just two of the ways that we can connect and get some information from Office 365. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Olivier, who's going to talk a little bit about the Office 365 API and how you can get some information from there.
Yep, thank you very much, Tim. Great, great PowerShell. I'm sure all the PowerShell fans are excited now. So what I'll show now is the Office 365 APIs. So some of you might have heard that before. It's usually something that was provided so that you could write your own application and get some data out of your Office 365 tenant. So you're going to ask, how can I use that? Maybe you like to write some C# or VB.NET or whatever, but this is not the point. So Microsoft has packaged these APIs in PowerShell. So just like Tim showed you, you have some PowerShell commands that you can use. Again, we'll have the link to that. And basically, you can call these PowerShell commandlets, and they will give you some kind of formatted output with like all the data that you're looking for. So similar to what he showed. But there's actually another way that you can use these Office 365 API, and it's as simple as just launching your Microsoft Excel client on your computer. So this is what I'll show you right now. Instead of just looking at the information, let's actually do it together. So just start Excel. It's as simple as that. And once you're in Excel, there's a data tab where you can actually connect to some remote sources. So what we'll do is you need to select from OData data feed. This is actually the format that will be used. Then you will need a couple of things. So the URL that we'll provide to you, it's basically reports.office365.com, and then goes to that reporting services. And you will need to provide credentials in order to be able to consume these APIs. So I am putting a global administrator right now. And when you press next, it's actually going to connect to your Office 365 tenant, authenticate the user you've put, and it retrieves the list of all the reports that you can do. And so these are all the reports. Microsoft keeps adding some within that list of reports. So you have some about all the client connection, all the CS1 are for Skype for Business. You have all the devices, everything on the mailboxes, the mail traffic, and a lot about SharePoint Online and some on OneDrive. So let's do one together right now. So I know often I'm asked, how can I know about mail traffic? So let's pick that one, mail traffic. Select it, press next. You can save that connection, save that these credentials and everything so that you can use it later. I'll just do finish. Yes, I've done it before. And then ask you how you want to view that data. So in that step, it's important you don't keep the default. Select pivot table report. And then press OK. And it will actually go and retrieve your data from there. So you can see at the bottom it's currently retrieving the data from my tenant using that pre-formatted report. So it makes different calls to the REST APIs and get the data for me. So you have the data right here available. So for those of you that are not familiar with a pivot table within Excel, you have your data here and you actually select what you want to look at. So on the right, I have different fields. So what do we want to know? We want to know message counts, we want to know the dates, and we want to know the directions, whether it's inbound or outbound. So here I have my table, and now in the Analyze tab here, you have a pivot chart. So you don't have to actually create the chart by yourself. You can just select pivot chart, select the kind of chart you want. So let's do a line so that I can see my evolution over time. This is a report from last week. And so it's almost good. I just have to switch columns and rows, as you can see. And here we are. Beautiful report. We see evolution of inbound and outbound traffic. And this was just a few clicks away. So I'm really excited about this one. First time I discovered that, was pretty much amazed. So try this on your own as well. Different reports you can do. Really easy. We can do another quick report just to show you again. So data, create from OData source, data feed. Put your credentials, the URL, put your credentials. It retrieves a list of all the reports, and then we can pick another one. So often one good thing to look at, for example, would be the different clients that are used. So we could do connection by client type. Let's pick monthly. So some of these reports you'll see will have already the time frame in it, whether you want to look at one point should be a week, a day, or a month. So here I'm going to do monthly. I'll do next, finish. Pivot table, don't forget this one, pivot table report, okay. Retrieves all the data. So again, it might be a little longer if you have a big tenant. This is a test tenant that we have. So we want client type, we want count, and you can have the dates too if you want. Pivot chart, select lines, okay. And often you'll see if you're not looking at what you expected, just go into design and switch rows and columns. And here we go. You can have all the information about my different clients. Let's look at the evolution of EAS for Active Sync. Press OK, and these graphs are actually dynamic, so it's pretty useful and very convenient. And then you can just export that report, and there's even like a refresh button that you can use. So if you actually save that file, you can further in time you can refresh the data source. So really useful. great way to use and consume these APIs. So really give it a try. There's a link that we'll provide to you at the end of the session where it explains all the different steps that I just went through. It's a little long, but definitely something you should check out. So as you've seen, this is really powerful, highly customizable. You can access all of the data. If you're looking for something, it should be in that API. You can access everything, all of the usage that Microsoft provides to us. The only downsides will be that it's a little complex to use. I mean, you've seen, you need to know what URL to use, where to connect, what data feed to select, what's the output, and format the output. So it's not completely out of the box, requires a little time to configure it, and it's really hard to automate and just schedule that or receive the output. But definitely a great way to access some of the data. So let's recap a little bit what we've seen in the different tools. You should really try to be familiar with all these tools, and there are some ways that you can automate or limit the time that it will take for you. So first thing I recommend is you should subscribe to the RSS feed for the service health incidents. You can do that directly from the portal. PowerShell, you should try to use it, do some simple examples, and you can create some recurring reports and send them to you or export them from your scripts. So this can be a way to automate part of it. What I've just showed you in Excel, well, if you prepare some Excel files, have some sheet ready with OData connections, you can use the refresh feature, so that will save you some time in the future. And finally, use the OCPA. Anytime you have some issues, you have some end users complaining about performance, about speed, use that. You have a tool that will give you metrics. Metrics are really interesting and really allow you to compare and understand the different feelings expressed from the end users. So obviously there are some downsides. It will take some time to configure. You might need to maintain these different script or automation that you have configured, and in the end it's kind of hard to automate. So this will be great for most of you. You should definitely check it out, especially before when you're doing POCs or doing the migration. You might find that you need easier and better, and this is where GSX can really help you. So just 1 minute we'll explain who GSX is and how we can help you. So we've been around for the past 20 years now doing monitoring and reporting. We have offices throughout the world, and we have been helping all of our customers to transition to the cloud, and most of our clients are now using Office 365. We have around 600 customers worldwide in 40 different countries, and now we have a really strong offering because we specialize in Office 365 for mostly larger enterprises, but it's really where it's critical for you to have access to all that information and these reports. And what we provide goes to all the different services provided by Office 365. So we'll be able to do performance monitoring that will be fully automated, scheduled, and you will have nothing to configure and maintain. Just use the benefits. We'll do a lot of reporting. So all these usage reports, we are able to automate them, schedule them, and send them to you through our SaaS application. We can also help you with mass management of all the different users and accounts in the cloud, and we have different services around these. And this is applicable for all of these different platforms. So really a really good thing. Check it out. Just let us know if we can be of any help. We're happy to schedule a demo with you if there's any product that you would be interested in. Here is, as promised, a list of different links. So some obvious one like the portals, connectivity tools, but also what Tim showed you about PowerShell, how to connect, how to report, the APIs I've just showed you, how to use them in Excel. So we'll make sure to provide that slide deck to you. And if you need to check more about GSX solution, you can do so at gsx.com. So thanks for you. I'll hand it up over to Roger for Q&A if you guys have any questions.
Well, thank you, Olivier, and Tim as well for what was just a fantastic overview and tutorial on life in Office 365. And we do have quite a few questions that we're going to jump into here. And I want to let everybody know, if we're not able to get to your questions, don't fear. We will forward those to the GSX folks, so you can look for subsequent follow-up on those. So the first one is, and I'm just going to throw these out, and Tim and Olivier, and let you guys respond. What are the requirements, permissions to run PowerShell scripts?
Yeah, so as far as requirements and permissions, obviously you would need to have PowerShell installed in the local machine that you're going to be running it from. But as far as the specific permissions, there is a permission, and I would have to look up specifically what it is, but there's a permission that says remote PowerShell is enabled. In the document links that you have there, it should have a lot of the links to how to enable that. So the account needs to be able to run remote PowerShell. And then from a Office 365 permission perspective, view-only organization should be okay. But depending upon what you want to do, obviously if you want to make changes through PowerShell and stuff like that, you're going to need higher levels of access. So for the basic reporting, read-only at the organizational level should be fine. But again, specific granularity of the permissions is available inside the documentation that we'll provide.
Great. Next question is, again on permissions, what permissions are required to access the Office 365 ports?
Yeah, so I'll take this one. What I showed you today, I was logged in as a global administrator, so I had access to everything. You have different levels of permission, whether you assign these permissions from the portal or from PowerShell. But basically, you can assign Exchange administrator, SharePoint administrator, these type of things, and depending on the access that you provide, they will be able to access that. But so only administrators are able to access the portal.
Next question is, what Office version do you need to be able to use Excel for the Office 365 API?
Okay, great question. So what I showed you today was using Excel 2013. The OData data feed was actually available from Office 2010, so Excel 2010. So you should be able to run these from Excel 2010. I would highly recommend, though, that you use 2013 or even 2016 now.
Very good. Next question, does GSX provide services around Office 365 migrations?
So yes, definitely. We're very glad if we can help you out. We've been doing monitoring and reporting for 20 years now, so we have helped out a lot of our clients to move and transition from different systems, including Exchange on-premise to Office 365. So definitely, we help out before, during, and after the migration. So please let us know if we can help you out.
Great. And I think we have time for just a couple more here. Next one, do all these techniques work in hybrid deployments?
Yeah, I'll take that one here. That's a good question as well. Everything that you've seen today should theoretically work inside of a hybrid deployment. That's one of the most common scenarios that we see with all of our current customers and in a lot of the prospects that we've been speaking with. Especially in a large organization, it would be very rare for someone to move directly to the cloud after a migration period and just be completely in the cloud. Most common scenario is a hybrid scenario where somebody still has infrastructure left in the local network and then in 365. Like I mentioned earlier, that's how GSX actually runs things right now. Everything that we've seen here, the RCA tools, OCPA, PowerShell, the API, there should be some sort of equivalent for your on-prem deployments there. So should be able to get most, if not all, of this information that we've shown today through your hybrid environment as well as just a full cloud environment.
All right, and this will have to be the last one. Can you run the OCPA from a remote location?
Yes, definitely. That is the primary, I guess, deployment method, you would say, for the OCPA. It does things from the client perspective, remember? So wherever you download that tool, be it your local office, be it another location, that is where the tests are going to run. That's what the performance is going to look like. That's what the network tests are going to look like from that client location.
Very good. Well, we'll have to wrap it up with that. We've run out of time. I want to thank you, Tim, and you, Olivier, for joining us today for a great session. And we, of course, want to thank GSX for making it possible for us to bring you today's session. This concludes today's conference, and on behalf of CloudAdminCon.com and TechGenix, We want to thank all of our sponsors, including our platinum sponsor, Semantic Security, our gold sponsor, HP Enterprise, and our presenting sponsors, GSX Solutions and Osterman Research. We hope you all enjoyed today's sessions, and please watch for the upcoming 2016 TechGenics online conferences. Thank you all for attending.